I woke up to the sound of leaves snapping, each one sharp and deliberate, like tiny echoes of footsteps circling my tent. At first, I told myself it was just a raccoon or a deer. But then, the whispers began, soft, guttural, almost human, carried through the cold night air, brushing against the edge of my consciousness, like a warning I couldn't quite grasp. I froze. My heart thumped so loudly I was certain whatever was out there could hear it. The moon had vanished behind a wall of clouds, leaving the forest drenched in shadow. Every tree became a towering sentinel, every branch a claw reaching toward me. I had no memory of how I'd ended up here alone. Just that instinct screamed I wasn't alone, and that whatever lingered in the darkness was patient and cruel. Most campers never make it out. Some never speak of what they saw. I had thought those stories were exaggerations, tales told around campfires to thrill tourists. But when your own breath turns to frost and the whispers start answering questions you never asked, disbelief becomes impossible. The forest has a memory, and it remembers trespassers. It waits. That night, I realized something fundamental. These are not just stories, they are warnings etched into the minds of those who survived encounters most would rather forget. And what I experienced, it was only the beginning. Over the years, I have collected the accounts of others, campers, hikers, and wanderers. People who looked into the woods and found it looking back. What follows are their truths. The woods are patient. The woods are hungry. And tonight, you will hear the stories they left behind. The woods are deceiving. By day, they are alive with sunlight filtering through the canopy, birds weaving songs through the branches, streams glinting like scattered glass. They invite you in with the promise of solitude, adventure, and peace. You hike, you breathe the crisp air, and you think you understand their rhythm. But the woods I've come to know have a darker heartbeat, one that pulses beneath the surface, unseen yet insistent. I have walked these forests at dawn, the mist curling like smoke around my boots, and at midnight, when the trees merge into walls of black and the wind carries voices that shouldn't exist. I've seen shadows shift against the logic of light, felt eyes where no one should be watching, and known that even a single wrong step or a single ignored warning can make the difference between a story told and a story that ends forever. Over the years, I have gathered confessions from those who survived encounters most would rather forget. Hikers who left with more than bruised egos. Campers whose laughter turned to screams in the blink of an eye. They trusted the woods. They ignored the signs. And they learned too late that beauty can be a trap. Isolation can be a predator, and the familiar can become horrifyingly alien. You think you know the woods until they know you. That is the invisible line every camper must fear. And tonight, you will cross it with me, through the words of those who live to tell the tale, or thought they did. Our first story comes from a young camper who brushed off every caution. He laughed at old warnings, chalked up the eerie stories to overactive imaginations. But deep in the forest, where the trees grow thick and the shadows cling like smoke, he would learn exactly why some warnings are never meant to be ignored. Story 1. The Vanishing Campers. We were 5 friends gathered around a campfire that crackled and spat embers into the night sky. "Who's up for s'mores?" someone joked, and we all laughed. The sound swallowed almost instantly by the trees' shadows flickered at the edges of the firelight. But we shrugged it off. Too tired, too drunk on freedom to notice the way the darkness seemed to lean closer. "I'll grab more wood," Mark said, vanishing into the black beyond the circle. Minutes passed. When he didn't return, we called for him, laughter turning nervous, jokes faltering, nothing. Then Anna laughed nervously, pointing to the shadows. "Okay, who's messing with us?" But the only reply was silence, and the rustling of leaves that sounded like running feet. One by one, we began to notice James, Sarah, even Anna herself, vanish as if swallowed by the night. I stumbled toward the fire, heart hammering. "This isn't funny," I screamed, panic clawing up my throat. But the firelight showed nothing, no sign of them at all. Only the embers drifting into the darkness and the whisper of wind through the trees. And then it came. A scream, raw and jagged, echoing through the forest. Far too close to comfort. I froze, the fire crackling louder than ever in my ears, unable to move, unable to breathe. They said it was just a prank. But the cameras tell another story. Shadows moved against logic. Footsteps circled where no one stood. And the laughter, now distant and hollow, was replaced by something far worse. Silence that listens. Isolation in the woods doesn't just make you uneasy. It amplifies fear, stretches it until it claws at your mind. And as I would soon learn, that fear only grows with each story I collected. Story 2. Eyes in the Dark. I thought I was alone that night, hiking a trail I'd walked a dozen times before. The moon had risen high, painting silver lines across the forest floor. That's when I saw them. 2 tiny, glowing eyes, suspended in the darkness beyond the path. At first I thought it was an animal, a deer, maybe. But they didn't blink, didn't move like a creature would. They just watched. I stopped, breath shallow. "Hello?" My voice sounded wrong in the quiet, too loud, too desperate. The eyes tilted as if studying me and then vanished. I laughed nervously, shaking my head. Just my imagination, I told myself. But every step forward, they returned, glimmering, patient, following. I would blink, look away, and when my eyes met the dark again, they were closer, more numerous. The trees themselves seemed to shift, bending toward me, guiding those eyes, or perhaps hiding them from sight, teasing me with the impossible. I started to see shapes in the corner of my vision, tall figures slipping behind trunks, whispers that weren't carried by wind, and laughter that didn't belong to any human throat. My mind teetered between panic and disbelief. Was I hallucinating? Or was I witnessing something that had waited my entire life to notice me? Some things only appear to the observant, the unlucky, or the curious, and once noticed, they don't easily let go. I ran, stumbling over roots and loose stones, but the feeling of being watched never left. Even now, recalling it, I feel those eyes, still calculating, still patient, still waiting for someone foolish enough to look too long. Human instinct is a fragile line between bravery and foolishness. We press forward into what terrifies us, convincing ourselves we can handle it, that curiosity is harmless. But in the deep woods, that line can snap in an instant. And as my next story will show, some mistakes echo long after the first scream has faded. Story 3. The Howling at Midnight. I had set up my tent near the ridge, the kind of spot that promises breathtaking sunrises and nothing else. Around midnight, I woke to it. A low, mournful howl carried through the trees. It was unlike any animal I'd ever heard. Too intelligent, too deliberate. A sound meant to unsettle, to test patience. I called my friend Dave. "Hear that?" I whispered, straining to keep calm. "Probably just coyotes," he said. "Go back to sleep." "You don't understand. It's different. It's like it knows I'm here." The howling grew louder, closer, circling the tent. I could feel the vibrations through the ground, feel the air shift as if something immense was moving just beyond the thin fabric. I tried to convince myself it was imagination, nerves twisting reality. But then I heard it. A snap, a rustle, a breath against the tent flap. "Dave, My voice caught as something knocked the side of the tent hard enough to bend the poles. The phone slipped from my hand as a shadow darted past the window. My blood ran cold. I could see nothing, but the presence was unmistakable, patient, predatory, and amused. By the next morning, part of my gear was gone. My backpack, some of my supplies, even my shoes, though there was no trace of a path leading away. And I remembered the howls, still echoing faintly in the wind, a warning or a promise. Most ignore the sound. Those who listen never come back. The pattern was becoming clear. The woods, the whispers, the eyes, the howls, they were all connected, each a lure, each a test. And as the stories continue, you'll see how some encounters grow bolder, more direct, and far more terrifying than any tale told around a safe campfire. Story 4. The Cabin in the Fog. We had been hiking for hours when the fog rolled in, thick and sudden, swallowing the trail, the trees, even the sound of our own voices. Through the grey haze, a silhouette appeared, a small wooden cabin, abandoned, or so we thought. Its walls were weathered, blackened in places, the roof sagging as if weighed down by decades of secrets. A sense of wrongness clung to it, and yet curiosity, that dangerous friend, pushed us closer. The door creaked open under our hesitant hands. Inside, the air was stale, metallic, smelling of rust and decay. On the floor, dried blood traced symbols we didn't recognize, forming patterns that made my stomach turn. Candles, long burned to stubs, sat in rings around an altar-like structure, and scraps of parchment with jagged scrawled writing littered the corners. Something had been performed here, something we weren't meant to see. Do you think someone's still here? Whispered Rachel, her voice shaking. I wanted to answer, to reassure her, but the truth tightened my throat. We weren't alone. Shadows pooled in corners, twisting unnaturally, and a cold draft carried whispers that weren't carried by the wind. The symbol seemed to pulse faintly, like the cabin itself was aware of our intrusion. I wanted to leave, but our eyes were drawn to the altar, where objects too grotesque to name rested, tokens of rituals that should never exist in daylight, much less be witnessed by the living. Each second stretched, thick with dread, and the fog outside pressed against the windows. Hungry, patient, waiting, we fled before fully comprehending what we'd found. But even now, I can feel the pull of that place in memory. A warning that some knowledge is forbidden, some curiosity is punished. The woods do not forgive those who pry too deeply. And yet, for those who think they can navigate fears safely, the next story shows how quickly a seemingly quiet night can turn into something much more immediate, much more personal, and far more terrifying. Story 5. Whispers beneath the pines. I had set out alone that afternoon, drawn to a trail that promised solitude and quiet reflection. The pines loomed tall, their needles brushing against each other in a whispering chorus that should have been peaceful. But then the voices began, soft at first, like wind through the branches, murmuring my name. Adrian, come closer. I froze, eyes scanning the forest. Nothing moved. Yet the whispers were clear, deliberate, urging me deeper into the shadowed woods. Each step I took seemed to be mirrored by faint sounds behind me. Leaves crunching where no one should be. I called out, my voice trembling. Who's there? The only reply was the repetition of my own name, softer this time, coaxing, intimate, impossible to ignore. Hours blurred. I thought I saw shapes flitting between trees, glimpses of movement that vanished the moment I focused. The forest grew denser, paths twisting impossibly, loops forming as if the woods themselves were rearranging to keep me inside. I stumbled into a clearing, only to find the shadows thicker than ever. The whispers multiplying, forming phrases I didn't dare translate aloud. Stay, follow, never leave. Panic clawed at me. Every instinct screamed to retreat. Yet, the whispers had a pull I could not resist. I became hopelessly lost. The trail gone, replaced by endless green and shadow. Time itself seemed to bend, and I realized I had become part of the forest's memory. Another name etched into its long, patient recollection. The forest has a memory, and it never forgets your name. Every step, every glance, every moment of curiosity, it remembers. And as the encounters grow bolder, more direct, more terrifying, the next story will show just how far the forest is willing to go to claim those who wander too far, too late, and too curious. Story 6. The shadow that follows. We thought we were alone, sitting by a dwindling fire as night thickened around us. That's when I noticed it. A shadow, too tall, too dark, lingering just beyond the ring of light. Do you guys see that? I whispered. My voice sounded frantic even to me. See what? Jenna asked, squinting into the darkness. That. Over there. It's moving. No one responded for a moment. We all felt it. An oppressive presence that pressed in from the edges of the campsite. The way the air grows heavy before a storm. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made us jump. I tried to laugh it off, but the laughter stuck in my throat when I realized the shadow mimicked our movements, stopping when we stopped, approaching when we dared to step back. Maybe it's just someone else camping, Mark said nervously, though his hands shook. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. But then, a loud crash erupted from the perimeter. the sound of a pack being snatched, our supplies scattering. And in the dim light I saw nothing, yet I felt the loss keenly. Something had taken it, or them. Something patient, deliberate, intelligent. The shadow remained, and the stories whispered that it didn't just observe. It judged, it chose, it remembered. We fled into the trees, hearts pounding, shadows stretching longer and darker than they should. Every ordinary tree seemed menacing now, every flicker of movement a warning. Darkness doesn't just hide things, it changes them, reshaping the familiar into something alive, something hungry. And as the nights grow longer and the encounters bolder, the next tale will show how even the smallest misstep in the forest can invite terror straight into your camp and leave you wondering if escape is even possible. Story 7. Campfire Stories Gone Wrong. We huddled around the fire, tossing logs into the flames and daring each other with ghost stories. And then the figure appeared. Sam whispered, voice trembling, just outside the cabin, staring, waiting. I laughed nervously. Come on, it's just a story. You're trying to scare us. But the wind shifted. The flames flickered violently, shadows leaping far beyond their source. I blinked, and a figure seemed to linger at the tree line, elongated, darker than night itself. Did anyone else see that? I asked, voice tight. Probably just a trick of the light, Rachel replied, though her grip on her cup tightened. The stories continued, each one darker than the last, and with every word spoken, the forest seemed to listen. Snaps of twigs echoed in the darkness, whispers curling around our laughter. Something was responding, growing bolder, moving closer with each tale. I'm serious, guys, Mark said, rising, voice shaking. We shouldn't be joking about this stuff, not here. But the moment he spoke, the fire flared unnaturally, and a cold breath passed over us. A log rolled off, and when we turned, a shadow moved independently, darting from tree to tree with impossible speed. It was no longer just a story. It was alive, hungry for attention. Not all tales are made for telling. Some demand an audience, and we had become it. As fear sharpened our senses, the forest seemed to whisper its own rules. Step too far, speak too loudly, mock the dark, and it will answer. And those rules, unseen, unspoken, would be broken again in ways far more terrifying in the next story. Story 8. Footsteps in the mist. The mist had rolled in early that evening, softening the trail and swallowing sound. At first, the footsteps were distant, barely audible over my own boots, crunching against leaves. I stopped, heart thudding. Nothing. I continued, dismissing it as my imagination. Minutes later, they returned, closer, deliberate, echoing my pace. I spun around. Empty forest. "Hello?" I whispered, voice trembling. Silence. The fog thickened, and with it, a creeping certainty. I was not alone. I tried to speed up. The footsteps matched me, unrelenting, sometimes skipping a beat as though mocking my fear. Every turn, every rise in the path, they followed. Shadows shifted in ways that didn't match the trees, and fleeting glimpses suggested something moving just beyond sight. Something patient, deliberate. I shouted, kicked at the mist, tried to shake my panic. The sound stopped briefly, then resumed, closer, sharper. Each step a reminder that I was being hunted in a place I once thought serene. By nightfall, I had lost the trail, but the footsteps never faltered. Somewhere behind me, they waited, always waiting, always matching my steps. I ran blindly, the fog swallowing the path, the stars, even hope. You can run, but sometimes the woods run with you. And as the fear accumulates, as patterns emerge from countless nights and countless campers, it becomes clear. The forest doesn't just hide threats. It teaches lessons in terror. The next story will show just how far it will go when it decides you've lingered too long. Story 9. The Tree That Screams. I stumbled across it just as dusk bled into night. A tree unlike any other, gnarled and twisted, its bark mottled with dark streaks that glistened in the fading light. Then I heard it, a high, keening wail, like someone or something trapped inside, screaming for release. I pressed closer, drawn against my better judgment. The air smelled of damp earth and something iron-rich, metallic, like old blood. My fingers brushed the bark, and it shivered beneath my touch, almost alive, pulsating faintly. The cries grew louder, more insistent, wrapping around my skull. "Hello," I whispered. My voice sounded wrong, swallowed by the forest. The tree responded, a low, tortured groan vibrating through the ground, through my feet. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the pull of the unknown rooted me in place. And then, nothing. A snap, a flash of movement, and the forest saw swallowed it all. Where I had stood, there was only emptiness. No tree, no scream, no sound. My heart hammered as panic surged. I looked around, calling out, but the world felt hollow. The air thick and unmoving, as if the forest itself had inhaled Some things in the woods are beyond understanding. They defy explanation, resist reason, and punish the curious. Across countless nights, the pattern is clear. The forest watches, it remembers, and it takes. And for those who dare to linger too long, it has one final story. One that surpasses fear. One that ensures no one walks away unchanged. Story 10. The Last Light. We had stayed too long, chasing the sunset along a trail that seemed endless. Darkness fell faster than expected, and the forest closed in. Thick and suffocating shadows moved independently of any light source, whispering in voices that carried our names. "Where are we?" Jenna asked, clutching my arm. Her voice was fragile, trembling with every sound the forest made. I don't know, I admitted, scanning the black around us. Every step we took seemed to loop back. Trails vanishing, familiar landmarks gone. The whispers intensified, circling, urging, laughing. One by one, they disappeared. A rustle here, a scream there, and the forest swallowed them without trace. I ran blindly, hearing only the hollow echoes of friends who were no longer with me. My lungs burned. My mind screamed for reason. But reason had left these woods long ago. At the edge of a clearing, a faint glimmer of light beckoned. I ran toward it, heart hammering, and found myself outside the tree line by dawn alone. But even now I feel it, the presence that trailed me, patient, invisible, waiting. Even now, they watch. Even now, they wait. The forest remembers every name, every step, every curiosity. And though I escaped, I know the woods are far from done. For those who wander carelessly, who laugh at warnings, who dare to listen, the stories never end. As we reach the end of these tales, it's impossible not to notice the patterns that thread through each story. The whispers that follow the curious, the shadows that move with intent, the way isolation magnifies every fear until it becomes a predator in its own right. Every camper I've spoken to, every survivor who dared to recount what they saw, left with one certainty: the woods are not passive. They observe, they remember, and they judge. Some of you may listen and dismiss these stories as fiction, folklore, exaggerated around campfires. But remember this: every account I've shared tonight comes from people who lived these moments. Some barely escaped, some never returned, and some, well, some may still be out there, wandering those trails, their names etched into the memory of a forest that never forgets. Even after the stories end, the woods don't forget. and neither should you. The leaves rustle with secrets. The shadows shift with unseen intent, and the silence between sounds can carry a warning if you know how to listen. If you've ever felt the hair on your neck prickle while walking beneath the pines, or heard a voice whispering your name in the wind, you already know. Curiosity has its cost, and some boundaries should never be crossed. I want to hear from you. Share your experiences, your theories, your encounters with the unknown. Every story adds to the tapestry of the forest, keeps the memory alive, and warns others who might one day wander too far. Your voice can reveal truths, keep secrets, or perhaps even summon the courage to face what lingers in the darkness. But remember this above all else: no matter how safe you feel, no matter how distant you think the shadows are, the woods are always watching. They remember the brave, the foolish, the curious, and those who dare to listen when they shouldn't. And while the sun may rise tomorrow, and while life may feel normal once more, the presence remains patient, eternal, and unseen. So as you close this video and the night settles around your own world, think of the forest waiting just beyond the edge of perception. Think of the whispers, the eyes, the footsteps, and know this: the stories have ended, but the watching has not. The woods never forget.